So good morning, this is Natalie Gilly with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. Welcome to the webinar today. We're going to go ahead and I'll share my screen here and we'll get started. So let me get the presentation up on the screen for you. So welcome to the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar. Today we're going to talk about bicycle friendliness in Thief River Falls and Roseau. Today is November 18th and we will be holding this webinar for 1 hour and welcome our panelists here in just a few minutes. So thanks for joining. The Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar is intended for the purpose of connecting local bike walk leaders to share stories and ideas about how they're lifting up the walking and biking cultures in their communities. So thanks for coming together for this purpose today and for continuing to grow the bike culture across the state of Minnesota. So to welcome everyone to the call today, we're going to do introductions via the Zoom chat box. So go ahead and type in your name and location in the chat box. Also, our icebreaker question for the day is to name a bicycle friendly community in Minnesota, and extra credit if you can name what level of an award they are, or I guess extra credit, how many BFCs are there in Minnesota? That will be a question revealed. The answer will be revealed later in the webinar today. So stay tuned. If you'd like to know the correct answer of how many BFCs there are in Minnesota, feel free to venture out and be courageous to put your answer in the chat box if you'd like. And feel free to mention if you are living in the bicycle friendly community as well. So it's great to have all of you on the webinar today. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get into the panel discussion today. We have one more webinar after today in 2020. We're already at the close of our year of webinars. So Wednesday, December 16th from 11:30 to 12:30 on Zoom, we will be hosting our final webinar of the season of the year 2020. If you're joining as a guest today, feel free to send an email to info@bikemn.org if you'd like to join the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network listserv to get our communications and be plugged in with the YouTube links for replay from the webinars that we have hosted throughout the year and continue to host here on Zoom. So just a quick recap, I wanted to put this slide in here to just remind people about the webinars and the topics we've covered in 2020. So if you do want to listen to the replay of a previous webinar and you're interested in what was it that BikeMN talked about in 2020 during this leadership webinar series, here are the webinar topics that we covered during 2020. We shined a spotlight each month on different communities throughout the state, all the way from Mankato to Wabasha, Fergus Falls, Walker. And of course today, as you're joining, you'll hear a little bit more about Thief River Falls and Roseau. There's another network webinar, which you guys might be part of, the Safe Routes to School Network. And they will be holding their final webinar of 2020 on December 20th from 10 to 11. They'll be talking about their 2020 survey results. So before we get started, I want to share a land acknowledgement. This is something that maybe you've heard a little bit about in other webinars that you've participated in. And we wanted to share the BikeMN land acknowledgement statement that we have shared on through our communications and wanted to share here as well. We want to acknowledge that we occupy the ancestral land of several indigenous groups, including the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Cheyenne, Odo, Iowa, and Meskwaki people. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We affirm that Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities. Despite centuries of colonial violence, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Indigenous peoples are still here, demonstrating innumerable talents and gifts in the midst of continued oppression. They must be celebrated and uplifted. I've shared a link in this slide as well if you'd like to click on that to learn where your location is, where you're currently situated, whether it's where you work or where you live. So feel free to click on that link and check that out if you're interested. So the first person on the panel today that we're going to have speak today is our Executive Director from the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, Dorian Grilly. So I'll welcome you to the webinar today here, Dorian, and turn it over to you to talk a little bit about Bicycle Friendly Minnesota.
Nice to be here. And it was really fun to be in Roseau and Thief River Falls, following all the public health guidelines in September. I'm so sorry that COVID-19 is exploding all around the state, including in those cities and the better part of, or all over Minnesota. So, and this is something that BikeMin has chosen to do and has been doing since the beginning. So next slide, Natalie. Our goal is to be the #1 state on this ranking list. And as you can see, Oregon and Washington have been hanging in there. We got bumped out of the #2 spot by Oregon a couple of years ago, but Washington is consistently up there at the top. But the good news is that the gap is very, very narrow. And if you see that yellow box about legislation, it's mostly legislation that they score us lower on. We certainly hope to make that the top part of our legislative agenda in 2021. We have a committee of people, and thanks to the people on this call that were on our legislative committee call from people from around the state were on our legislative committee call on Monday. And we talked about some really simple things or some really great ideas. And that includes doing a virtual day on the Hill, probably in February or March of 2021. So stay tuned for that. But also talked about the idea that Zoom and other video conferencing has made it much, much easier for constituents to be in touch face-to-face with their legislators. And I think that they will welcome those inputs. So I encourage everyone who's part of the Leadership Network to also engage in our policy and funding work at the Capitol. It's so important that people from all over Minnesota are heard. So next slide, Natalie. And as you can see, there are other states nipping at our heels. The dark green ones are not far behind, are ranked in the top 10. And the good news is I stay in touch with the executive directors of the biking organizations from those states on a regular basis. We meet via Zoom. It's really wonderful to be able to talk to them about what their priorities are. And the goal is, for all boats to be risen here, to rise with the tide. And the good news is, I'm really hoping that the new administration can do a lot more with bicycling and walking. Joe Biden was a personal friend of Congressman Oberstar's, and I think he understands that message deeply. I also was encouraged to hear from the League of American Bicyclists during their webinar last week that a stimulus package may very well be transformed into an infrastructure package, which means bicycling and walking will and safe routes to school hopefully will be funded at a higher level. So next slide. And I'm also really proud of this work and the work of our members and chapters all throughout Minnesota. It's so important that that we try and bridge that urban-rural divide that seems to be ever growing in Minnesota, and that we work hard to make sure that the message is bicycling and walking is important everywhere in Minnesota, not just in the urban core. So I'm really proud of this map. Next slide. I'm also really proud of this map, and I see that Wayne Hurley, or I mean this bar chart. I see that Wayne Hurley from Petal Fergus Falls is on the call today, and I love it that Fergus Falls is setting the bar pretty high for friendly competition in small communities all over Minnesota. I also love it that big businesses like 3M and Thomson Reuters and Target really take this seriously, and are using the fact that the Twin Cities are great places to live and include bicycling and walking in their recruitment slides when they do presentations, because they're in the business, and so are businesses in Fergus Falls and Thief River Falls. They're in the business of attracting and retaining talent from all over the country and all over the world. And bicycling and walking is part of that message. So by all means, if you have some potential bike-friendly business candidates, let's get in touch and we can talk to them via Zoom. I can't remember, are there any more? So, and I'm not, the Higher Education Bike Network is something that we have been working on in partnership with the Green Corps program, which we have been granted funding for a full-time service member who works out of the Bikeman office and works on bikeable community workshops and the Higher Education Network. So we now have, I believe it's 6 bicycle-friendly universities in Minnesota, and we'd love to have more. And if you know of any potential, please reach out to Carl at bikemin.org.
Thanks, Dorian. This is a really awesome network of higher education folks across the state, and maybe you haven't ever heard of them. I don't know if you've heard of this network or not, but folks that are on the Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar that join us regularly, you may have heard of that national program that's under that umbrella of Bicycle Friendly America, and this is the Bicycle Friendly University is a national designation that you could seek out. This higher ed network, we invite whether you're a student or staff or other professor or involved in the campus in some way, shape, or form to get involved in this network. And I know there has been times during the last couple of years where folks across the state have maybe prompted as part of your bike ed goals for the year to develop some type of connection with higher ed, whether it's to seek out a BFC designation for a university or college that's in your community, or in some other way, shape, or form get connected with that university through programming and other bicycle friendly work. So definitely reach out to Carl. And then Carl will also be involved in some of our bikeable community workshop initiatives that'll happen here in 2021. So stay tuned as that begins to unfold as well. So if you don't know Carl, reach out and introduce, and the higher ed network is a good way to do that. So before we move on to our other featured speakers today, I just wanted to go back to this slide. So since I mentioned that we would reveal the answer to the opening question about how many bicycle friendly communities there are in Minnesota, the correct answer is 32. And you can see on the map, these are spread out throughout the state of Minnesota. And if you've mentioned in the chat box that you are from one of these bicycle friendly communities, thank you for all the work that you've done to make Minnesota a more bicycle friendly state. So it continues to grow. And as Dorian mentioned, this isn't just in the metro, this is statewide. And there's bikes on this map all the way across the state of Minnesota from Grand Marais to Albert Lea. So thank you all for your contributions and your continued work to grow this community. So I will just pause for a moment and see if we have any questions in the chat box, possibly for Dorian or the group to discuss briefly before we move on to our other featured speakers. So we do have a question in here, and I think this is maybe a question about education. Who are the education facilities on the list? And so this is from Southeast Minnesota.
I'm about to post that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dorian. So we'll get a link into the chat box with some more information about that. And Luke mentions that they're trying to get Minnesota West and Worthington on board. Thanks, Luke, for that plug and for that work that you're doing. And let's see here. Oh, I was wanting to work with, if somebody on the chat here has mentioned, Mark, I was wanting to work with Eric's Bike Shop about becoming a bicycle friendly business in Bloomington. Due to many factors, they are relocating to Minneapolis, and a reason being Minneapolis having a better bike infrastructure. Was there anything else about Eric's Bike Shop that you maybe wanted to mention, Dorian, and the connection that we've had with them as far as the work with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota?
Eric's Bike Shop has been one of the biggest sponsors of Bikemen from the beginning. Eric has donated 2 trailers and 2 bike fleets, and consistently been one of our largest major donors every year.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. And thanks to Eric's Bike Shop. I'm not sure if any of their folks are on the call, but you never know. So, and then we do have a comment here from Brian McCoy in Bemidji, which is where I hail from here in the Northwoods, and that will be re-upping bicycle friendly work soon. So I did see that they were on the list here for 2021 for bicycle friendly community to renew. So that's exciting to hear. And then we have City of Wabasha Chamber of Commerce plans to continue to work on BFB, bicycle friendly business, with their members, and have been trying to launch this work in 2 other cities as well. So another great connection between a local community in Greater Minnesota and the work that Bikemen is doing. So I don't know, Tina's on the call here today from Wabasha, and I know Dorian did some work with them on their bicycle friendly business work as well. So lots of connections here for folks on the call. And if you look at the chat box, you'll see that the bicycle friendly universities are M-State at bronze, McAllister at silver, University of Minnesota Twin Cities at platinum, Bemidji State University at bronze, Concordia College at bronze, and Minnesota State University Mankato at bronze. So those are your bicycle friendly universities here in Minnesota, and we're excited to potentially expand this list and grow that work. All right, so any other questions? If you'd like to ask a question and you're on audio, feel free to unmute yourself, and I'll pause for a moment to take any questions from the group.
I was curious if there's a similar education group for the lower education, you know, the middle school, elementary school, high school.
A bike-friendly ranking for schools?
Well, you said that there was this upper education group. Go to the slide about that. Is there a comparable group?
Yes, Bikemen has 2 staff people that are teachers that work with the Walk Bike Fun curriculum. So there is a network of teachers that they stay in touch with constantly around the state. It's focused on elementary school. Some people are using it in middle school, maybe in 6th grade. But we'd love to, in the future, when we have the resources, to try and develop that kind of a continuous education spectrum all through driver's ed and high school. That includes bicycling and walking.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dorian, and thanks for the question, Eric. We also have a comment here about the ramped up efforts in Wabasha and Elgin and talking about Walk Bike Fun in those areas. So thanks, Tina, for that work that you do and continue that. So one other closing comment I just wanted to make about this segment here. This was kind of an overview of Bicycle Friendly Minnesota and some of the work statewide that we're doing, a little bit of the umbrella programs that you might become involved in, whether it's a bicycle friendly community, bicycle friendly business, bicycle friendly university, the higher ed bike network, or Walk Bike Fun training, you know, or maybe all of the above. That's wonderful when there's that overlapping of strategies across the different programs within your community. I want to just mention before we move on to the Thief River Falls folks is that Dorian and I have been doing work with both Roseau and Thief River Falls up in the northwest part of the state. And 2020 has been a pretty unique year to be able to do bicycle friendly work. So it's been a creative process. It's been a process that's involved, you know, learning about the different guidance that has unfolded throughout the year and figuring out how to do this in a safe way that helps keep us all healthy and also continues to move forward the bicycle friendly work in Minnesota during this global pandemic. So we did hold socially distant meetings, taking precautions following CDC guidance in Roseau and in Thief River Falls. And in Roseau, they are continuing to do work there. Our speakers today will be joining us from Thief River Falls. So I'll do an introduction here of each of these speakers here. And we are going to be welcoming Glen, who is a year-round bike rider, spinning wheels on gravel, pavement, trails, snow, and ice, an active champion for Bike Thief River Falls, and a licensed cycling instructor. The other speaker from Thief River Falls is going to be Cheryl Lee, and she is an active champion for Bike Thief River Falls, enjoys riding in fundraising events, riding the trails and roads in the area in Minnesota, and a big supporter of bike safety and education. So welcome to the webinar today, Glen and Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, well, here's kind of our opening slide with our Bike Thief River Falls logo, and we just we'll give you folks kind of what we've been working on, give an update on that. And one of the things we finally got done and got located around town, we had 28 bike racks we finally got placed around town this summer during the COVID time. And the photo shows one of our big champions that helped make some of this happen was Andy Miller, who teaches at the Northland Community and Technical College. The little helper there is our granddaughter, my granddaughter, and she helped assemble some of the racks the one day for us. And just talk a little bit about, initially we're working with a local business in town. They kind of backed out. One of the folks that worked at that business came up with the design. We kind of stole some of the design from elsewhere and then just tweaked the design, put our logo on it. And then also we're able to, for some of the businesses, for the college and then for the Eagles, actually put their logo on it too. And Andy, as an English teacher, put the big N on there for the Northland College, placed some there. But one of the things was kind of a neat partnership. So they ended up working with Northland Technical and Community College with their welding program. Of course, COVID, that was going to be a class project for them, and they ended up just the welding instructor cutting them out, and as well as the channels to mount the racks on. But part of the deal was that we worked out was that set up a scholarship fund for welding students, kind of an endowment fund. And for each of the uprights that were done, we donated or paid $100 for those racks to be done and for the welding and cutting. And then we went with a local folk business that did the powder coating, kind of matches some of the colors for the Visit TRF and chamber logos and colors, as well as comes pretty close to the school, high school and school colors as well. And had the county bought some, the city bought a good number, and then we had some good donors that helped pay for these as well. And the cost roughly was about $150 per upright to get placed around. And that's, I don't know, I guess anything else, Cheryl, on that? But
no, I think we went to a couple of the local groups in town to get some of our donations, and didn't really push putting their own logo on it, which was fine with most people for the downtown area especially. And we have talked with our city planner, and he plans on adding more as the time goes by. And I think we have to have 7 at a time, because that's how many one sheet covers. One sheet of the metal, we have to cut 7 at a time. So when we get an
Yeah, the
order for
college-
7, we'll be able to redo
Yeah.
another group.
College can do, actually, their cutter isn't as big as the original business, so I think they can do like 3 or 4 on a sheet. But
Okay.
the other thing too, kind of mentioned that now with the logo, and yeah, we can personalize those with the business logo above, and we kind of push to keep the Bike Thief River Falls logo and just shrink that up. But then on top, they can have the business logo put in there. So, and the welding instructors game to do more. It's a good win for them. And the thing for us, I think it's a win-win that way too, is just having the, you know, it's a good educational opportunity as well as fundraising opportunity for the college, for the welding program. And we know it'll be around for a while, hopefully, and can always go for them for future racks down the road. So I think that's enough on the racks. Other
Next rep.
folks ask questions later, we can talk on that too. Here's just some of the photos. The one on the upper left is at the Eagles Club. Didn't zoom in close enough, but it has the Eagles logo on it. The one's outside the chamber offices and Visit TRF office. And lower left is some that were placed down on the edge of downtown. So we had to grab some photos of some of that as well. So city did and placed around 11 different ones, some 2s, most of them 3 sets. And I see, yeah, Luke did a bit of it's not a masked bear, but it's a masked troll, because here with the Sons of Norway, and theoretically we have the highest Norwegian population in the country. So the Sons of Norway promote that. Well, they have the trolls. Well, then this year they had a decorating contest, and Cheryl can maybe throw in a bit there, because I think it was kind of a fundraising thing as well.
Right. Some of the trolls are what our city promotes. We have a troll walk anyway, and this year, because of COVID, they decided to do some fundraising. So some of the nonprofits in the city raised funds to have those masks put on the trolls. So it was a fundraising for them. It's another kind of good idea for fundraising.
That was kind of a fun thing. All of a sudden the mask appeared as I'm out riding. I go like, whoa, kind of neat. So, all right, it's enough on racks, I guess. So.
Yep. Next slide.
All right, one of the things with the COVID stuff this year, we tried a photo scavenger hunt and kind of virtual thing, and had folks in just upload that or put the things related to the photo, at least one photo or 2, upload on our Facebook page, and then we kind of search. We didn't get as much participation as we would have liked, but here are a couple of our young winners, and I delivered them to the trail where they like to ride, and then they had Sanford, who's been a pretty good, Sanford Wellness, been a pretty good supporter, donated the bottles, and then we gave the winners shirts, and also had some DQ certificates for some of the folks too. So, but the ones that participated, I know had a good time. We'll have to see if we redial that again this year, but we would have liked to have more participation. But it's kind of a fun thing. Had good support from folks, but would have liked to have more folks doing it. Street changes, trails, and question mark. Just talk a little bit, and Cheryl can chime in. We have have had some nice things happening in the last few years, and one of the ones just got completed this fall is a trail that kind of parallels a rebuild of Highway 1 and 59 going west in town, and it goes right next to, so it skirts the roundabouts a tad bit, makes it a lot more friendly than a couple of the other roundabouts that we have in town for folks to get around, and it's nice, and then has nice connections to get across. This goes east-west, and there's some nice connections to get across the north-south intersections as well. Cheryl's, our first Cheryl's in downtown. We got this year as well when they redid the streets there for the downtown streets. And then see my big wide body leaning up against my bike there is this was a fairly wide street just on the north side of downtown on 4th Street, and when the Downtown Development Association looked at, they wanted more parking, they wanted diagonal parking. The streets here were wide, so they argued for diagonal parking. We argued then that if you want diagonal parking, at least have them back in so that, you know, visibility is better for them to see cyclists and other folks going by, and then place the Cheryl's there too. And then with that as well, at each of the intersections, they placed stop signs and then actually bump outs too, so that it less distance for folks to walk, get across safely. And then with the stop signs too, it slowed down the traffic there. Otherwise, that was kind of like a racetrack at times for folks just on the edge of downtown to avoid, they could drive for about 4 blocks without having to stop at any stoplights or signs. And this helps there to slow things down. Anything else on that, Cheryl? I know the Cheryl's created kind of a furor, and I got a little initially upset when I saw them painted till I saw cars parked, because I thought they were awful close to where cars would be parked. But as it turns out, they're set off far. I would have preferred them to be painted more in the center of the lane, but that's my own thing. But I think they'll be fine. But
And it is working. I think people are becoming a little bit more aware, and I've heard comments in the community. So it is helping, I would say. And putting the stop signs in was a biggie to
Yeah.
slow the traffic down and then it also allows the trail or the routes in downtown to be more designated, so people know that there are going to be bikes here. So that's been good.
and hopefully we're hoping that it'll send a message to some of those folks that like to ride bikes like there's salmon going upstream, that maybe they'll follow the arrows rather than go against them. But that's an educational moment, I think.
Education is ongoing.
Hey Glenn, it's Josh. I have a question about the back end diagonal parking. I've seen that for a long, well, not seen it. I've heard it for a long time that is everything about it just makes sense. And it's safer and it's shorter and all these things, but it's almost impossible to get anybody actually say, yep, we should do that, because we just haven't. And that making that change is like insane to people. Are they actually doing that, and have people not loved it, or what are your thoughts?
When we took this picture, I know, and then later we did, this was the photo with me there is the day when Dorian and Natalie were up and we did kind of our kickoff for a bikeable community assessment. But I think there was only one car that had driven in, you know, the old original diagonal parking. Otherwise they had all backed in, you know, because the way they laid the arrows or the diagonals out, I mean, it's easier to make it this way. So, and most are, you know, I've ridden bike by there pretty regularly, and it's pretty rare that I see folks kind of cheating and doing it the wrong way. So I don't know. It worked out. I'm not sure how we managed to convince the folks to do that, but then the city actually has a link as well on their website that shows, you know, the back end diagonal parking, has a video of that and how that works. So, and folks have adopted it pretty well. I was kind of surprised, but I still don't totally get it in some ways. And because right next to it is a big parking lot, and it's rare that parking lot's ever full of cars as well, but it's just, I don't know. But the idea, they narrowed it down with the bump outs and it works pretty well. But the other
There's
side,
also, excuse me, Glenn, there are also signs posted along the diagonal on the sidewalk showing how you're supposed to back in. So that I think helps also.
Yep.
A lot of those people I think are employees of the businesses close by. And from the people that I've talked to, they do like it. They think it's great, especially when they're ready to leave.
yeah,
They can get out easier.
quick escape.
Yeah.
All right, just a few slides of our bikeable community assessment. And since it was during COVID times and the weather was not too bad, but we had
chilly.
just a real quick. So we had ended up with a contract. I think it was between Quinn Ship, which the Ship folks up here. The Quinn covers 5 counties here in northwest Minnesota, and they paid for the, to set up a contract with Bike Min to do the assessment for Roseau and Thief River Falls. And Ship's been, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but been a pretty good partner and rode around parts of the city. And I know Dorian did a bit more riding and walking in some of the city as well, but we had kind of two bike rides, one in the morning, talked a little bit about bike friendly business applications as we rode one part of town. And then later that day, rode another part of town. And then just after the ride, this is at a park right off of downtown where we sat and met and practiced social distancing and had like our Ship person, so she made sure we practiced good social distancing and did what was right. And I think it worked out pretty well. A little breezy at times. Cheryl, comments, thoughts?
No, I just wanted to mention we did have our city planner and I don't know what his full title is. He does a lot of work in the city, but he's the one that does a lot of the grant writing for us on safe routes to schools. And we also had our county engineer. So we had some good stakeholders at the meeting, which I thought was very, very helpful. And they're very much proponents of making our community bicycle and pedestrian friendly. In fact, not only Thief River Falls, but the entire county. So, and they've done a lot of good things. And I think this kind of just cemented it for us.
They've been good folks to work with, both county and city level. It's been very encouraging. I think we're good with that one. And just a shot here of slides that at the kickoff meeting. So this banner I'll talk about. We'll talk about that a tad bit later. The Ship also purchased that for us, and you see their name on there along with Bike Min as partners and our logo on there, and some shots of some of our biking activity and folks in this part of in this city and around the area. Partnerships. Well, go back to that. We'll talk a little bit, and maybe I'll maybe let Cheryl talk on some of the partners, and I'll chime in. I've talked enough for a while.
Thanks.
and just maybe
DigiKey is one of the largest distributors of electronic components in the United States, and they are our largest employer in town at this point. They have agreed to sponsor bicycle handbooks and work with us on doing some biking education and trying to get more bicycle friendly business. And we're working with them. I think because of COVID, I think that got pushed back another year before they'll be on doing the advertising on the handbooks. Sanford is also one of our biggest champions for bicycle friendly community and bicycle rides. We have, through our wellness center, one of our people on our committee is in charge of the wellness center, and she in the past has done rides monthly for families, and she's incorporated some things like scavenger hunts, pizza night, hot dog night. And this year, because of COVID, we kind of had to suspend some of that, and hopefully next year we'll jump back into that. And she's also been a big donor. They've been a big donor for us for any kind of bike programs or anything that we choose to do. They're right behind us, so that's been good. We talked a little bit about the city and the county doing a lot of bike friendly things, and they do have plans in the future. We just put in a new bridge. They are also planning for next year because the bridge just barely opened before freeze up here. And so there will be a bike trail along and to it and then across it. And it bridges from close to the clinic and hospital across to our elementary school. So hopefully we will be working on getting that as an entire bike friendly route to schools we shall see how that develops. Again, we've used many different nonprofits to help us along with doing some of the projects that we need to do.
And I'll just I mentioned Chip a little bit earlier, but they paid for the, beginning of the kickoff for Bikeable community assessment, the contract with Bike Men, paid for the banner and also a table cover to help at different events promote that. And early on, when we just started getting rolling, they paid for my hotel type expense when I attended the LCI training here a couple of years ago with actually with Luke Ewald and with Wayne Hurley. And that's 3 partners in crime there, kind of. So, but anyway, they've been, and Fran, hopefully we would have hoped she'd been doing this presentation, but she's also the county nurse for Marshall County, and she's up to her eyeballs and dealing with COVID stuff, needless to say. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been pretty fortunate in having some great partners. And go on.
Yeah,
Sure.
the other thing that I wanted to mention that I don't think we have it on any slides, but when we got together as a group and decided to do something, we decided to check with the police department, and they have all this excess inventory bicycles that they had picked up at different point. Nobody claimed them, so Glenn and Andy took it upon themselves to get some of those bikes, fix them up, maintenance, and then we put them as rental bikes at our local hotels. We have some at the American, some at our Come On In, some at the Grand Stay, and they're available for anybody who's staying at those hotels to use. And then also we developed some city maps, and those are put also then at those hotels so that people have access to it, and they can go for bike rides in the evenings after they've checked in if they choose. And I would say Glenn and Andy have done most of the work on that. We did have one of the bike shops from Grand Forks come over and kind of give us some help on it a little bit, and some other people too, I think, were involved in that.
Yep. And I think now with some more of the bike racks or parking available downtown, I think that maybe opens us up to maybe do some more repairs and replace some bikes out that folks can get on and ride, and leave it maybe some of the other racks. But that way we have to strategize down the road. But all right, partnerships, heard enough for now.
Yep.
Folks can ask questions. Cheryl, you want to talk
so
about
the next group is walk and bike to school day, and we did this in the fall of 2019 before COVID hit, and it was very, very successful. We had so many kids. We were so surprised that we had that many kids, but we have a trail that runs through some woods and then on the back of some houses, and then it joins up to another biking path that goes all the way to the schools. So on our way, we used the Rotary Club in town to help us, and the police department was there as a collaboration to help these kids all get safely to school that morning. We had volunteers helping front, middle, and back of the pack of riders, but very, very successful program, and we intend to continue on with that once COVID is done and we are back at school full time. So we did have we had a parking lot where the kids were to be dropped off. We gathered them all together, and then we left from the parking lot. And then we also had a group this was the elementary school. The pictures are mostly of the elementary school, but we also had another group from the middle school, and we had volunteers also for that group that did a ride over to the middle school. When they got there, they found that there was a lot of other children who had biked from their respective homes or areas to the school without volunteers, but it was highly successful. The school was involved in it. They had treats when they arrived at the school before they walked into the school for their school day. So it was definitely well worth that, and we will definitely be trying that again. Okay, next slide.
I don't know.
Okay,
I'll let
go
you
ahead,
do it,
Glenn.
Cheryl. Pick up. I know we made, when Michelle worked on the virtual walk bike fund, we made that available. I tried to make that available through the community ed and then also kind of posted out on our BikeTRF sites. I think it may have helped some, but would have liked to seen more engagement there by the school as well as the community on some of that.
We did offer this class, the Walk Bike Fun curriculum through community ed in the summer of 2019. We offered it twice during the summer. Myself and another fellow were the instructors. We had a little help from our community ed director, who is also trained in it. So it worked out well through community ed in the summertime, but now with the distance learning, it kind of, we weren't able to do it this summer. So we have reached out to our superintendent with the curriculum, and she's taking a good look at it. She's trying to get it into the cycle review, and that, so it depends on where they are in their curriculum cycle in reviewing to add it to that. But she's also going to try to put it as an online learning for distance learning for FIED, and also, or as a snow day activity, because we have changed to now on a snow day, kids do need to do distance learning that day. But I've also reached out now to the community ed director, and it will be in their fall brochure as far as a virtual class that they can jump into and use it. So it'll depend on the parents and being a little bit more active and involved in that to get the kids online for that class. But she is going to include it in her winter brochure.
Now we tried our bike rodeo this summer. Well, I think need to coordinate that more, back up just a tad bit. And then again, would have liked to have had more participation, but I think we need to coordinate that more with the school, I think, to make that more successful. And with the COVID and kind of shut down in March, one of the trails is typically kept pretty open most of the winter. Some of the others, they don't. And then when I just happened to ride bike by that one trail that was open, and the parking lot was full of cars. There was people just, when the guidance about social distancing, well, it was pretty hard to when there were so many people using that trail. So made contact with the city to clear one of the other trails, actually out in Cheryl's in my area. And it was, I thought I'd be the first one on there once they got the snow blown off there, and I jumped on there with my bike later that day, and there were already wheel tracks, footprints on it. So it was a good positive thing. I was glad that, city was open to doing that and getting the trail open, and otherwise it kind of sits open. But so some of those things, and needless to say, and I know every community has seen it, just the activity of more folks out riding bike, walking, using the trails and sidewalks and streets as well to get out and do that. And I was pretty encouraged by the city to do that. Then just one of our last slides, we did work with and did submit a couple of bike-friendly business applications here this fall. We'll see where they take us. We talked about Sanford Health. They've been in Wellness Center. They've been pretty, need to say, a big, good financial supporter. And as Cheryl talked about, sponsoring community rides, other bike events, pretty active. And then the Eagles Club, maybe just give a plug there. I'm an officer there, but they've been one of the first, I would say, kind of businesses to actually provide bike parking. And at that time, it was 2x4s and conduit for bike racks. And so they were all on board and upgrading and supporting, and they've been a pretty good donor for the racks and some other activities as well. Sponsor some of my fundraising rides. So that's, I don't know. That's about it, I think. Cheryl, anything else, thoughts? Otherwise, we're open to other questions.
I think that's it.
We've talked enough.
Any questions?
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Cheryl. This is Natalie at Bike Command here, and I'm just going to turn it back to one question that we had about bike racks that came up earlier in the presentation. You guys were on a roll, so we just kept going here. But I do want to bring it back to a question that Joanne had from Rochester. She was asking about what was the $150 inclusive of installation when you were talking bike racks?
Installation, those are all mounted on kind of channel irons. So for some, we assembled them on site. Andy and I did, because once you get them assembled, especially if you got 3 uprights, they're over 100 and they're 100 some pounds. But so we would just take them and assemble them, and when we did it, took us probably 10-15 minutes to get them bolted together. We haven't anchored them anywhere at this point. I don't know if we will. I guess with the weight, we haven't had anybody mess with them yet. The 100 and some pounds with 3 uprights on, I don't know. I think so far no one's gotten too crazy, but at some point maybe we may want to consider anchoring them and bolting them down. And the city, in a couple of spots, actually, in one of the areas, they actually did pour a pad off of the city sidewalk just for the rack, so it'd be off. And so they've been a little creative that way too. If anybody's interested, we can certainly share that design, and just send me an email, and can get some of that, or at least some of the contact info of the folks that worked on the design too. But I know Dorian had posted, it's pretty, and we tell businesses it's a pretty good deal to get a custom made rack for that kind of, one upright for $150, and potentially have your business logo on it. And I don't know, wouldn't get that kind of bargain if we were probably working with outside business, but working through the college, I think that's a pretty good partnership that way.
That's fantastic. It's really great to hear your story. There were so many things that were built into what you presented today, and you covered so many different topics here. The one thing that I wanted to just add to what you shared was about the context of how this came about, because Glenn and I had a conversation over the phone probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and not sure how much support and buy-in there would be in Thief River Falls to do some biking work. We talked about bicycle friendly community and whether there would be anyone that would be interested in doing this work, and then applied for Bikeable Community Workshop, didn't get it, then tried again, got it the next time. And then it came about where we're having this kickoff meeting for bicycle friendly community. And there's quite a few people engaged now, like you mentioned in the presentation, about who was there from the city and the county and key stakeholders across the community and funding partners. And this is just really wonderful to hear how this has grown and evolved, and to launch a Bike Thief River Falls. You have a local advocacy group. And as you heard from Glenn and Cheryl, you have locals that are installing bike racks. They're putting them together and partnering with that local college. So it's really great to see your story unfold over the years and continue to grow. And we look forward to probably virtually presenting with City Council in the coming months in Roseau and in Thief River Falls to talk more about the assessment report that we're producing for these communities who are doing work with Bike Men, and then the next steps going forward to hopefully lead up to adding a couple more bikes on that Minnesota map of bicycle friendly communities. So just a couple of closing slides here, and then we'll queue it up for any final questions that you might have for any of the speakers today. So just wanted to mention the Give to the Max. Tomorrow is the final day, November 19th. There's lots of wonderful organizations that you might support. If you support Bike Men, then we have some cool prizes. It sounds like that Ted and others will get to you. So thank you for those that have contributed already and support the work that we do here to help make Minnesota a more bicycle friendly place to be. So the other thing that we mentioned in October, and we wanted to just remind you that there is an open grant solicitation for Safe Routes to School. There's a couple links. There's one link actually with 2 opportunities, the Planning Assistant Grant and then a Safe Routes to School Boost Grant. So follow up if you would like more information about those, and the link is here if you'd like to apply for those grants. And I will turn over the mic here to Ted, our MC for the Winter Trivia event, and let him share a little bit about what's coming up in December.
Sure. Yeah, so we missed November for trivia, and we had a number of people reach out and say, like, when's the next one? So we wanted to put one more together. Usually get some good prizes to give out. I think we have like 12 or 15 people registered already. It's free as usual. but it's kind of a good way to kind of test your knowledge and stuff like that too. I put a link in the chat box so you can get that registration through Eventbrite, as well as our Give MN. And then one other thing I wanted to plug too is that, as Cheryl and Glenn mentioned, Bike Thief River Falls is, of course, a chapter of Bike MN. And there are a number of others too. So with Give to the Max, you can also support your local chapters as well in Albert Lee, Fargo Moorhead, Thief River Falls, Duluth, Fergus Falls, Rochester, and Cannon Falls. So you can definitely do some hyper local fundraising as well. So it's a great way to do that. So we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ted. And it's always entertaining to join these winter trivia or the trivia events, this one being a winter trivia, so you can test your knowledge. And it's I always learn something every time I log into one of these. And it's great to meet some new folks across the state who engage with other advocates, educators, and folks who like biking that would like to join. So thanks, Ted, for sharing this. And hopefully people are able to see the links in the chat box. There's been quite a few links today. There's been a lot of chat about the reverse angle parking, the diagonal parking, the bike racks, and a lot of ideas today that were energizing, that are prompting some how this might happen in other communities across the state. This is exactly what we're looking for when we share ideas and strategies through these presentations to shine the spotlight on communities across the state of Minnesota. Share a little bit from the locals about what they're doing, and also just have the locals talk about this and share their story. So it's great to see everybody on the webinar today. We do have just a couple of minutes. If you would like to ask a question, feel free to unmute. If there's anything that I have missed in the chat box that you asked and I failed to bring forward, please speak up and ask your question. We have just a couple of minutes if anyone would like to ask a final closing question here.
Hey, Natalie.
Yes, hi, Michelle.
Hi, did we match out? Sorry, long story.
I think we're matching outfits.
A couple of things. I put a link in the chat box about winter cities, and that's where I was reminded about the importance of clearing trails. They had a part 1 on whatever earlier day this week, Monday. And then there's also a really great mobility seminar going on in the United Kingdom right now that's free all week long, and I can throw that in the link in there too. But they're talking a lot about rural communities, which made me happy because I have I know that there are lots of rural communities here in Minnesota too, and about using bikes and car share and all sorts of ways to make it easy for people to get around. So plugging conferences.
I have
Thanks,
one to add, Natalie. AARP is doing an Age-Friendly Communities webinar tomorrow afternoon that I will be featured in. And I don't have the link right at, but I suppose we got 2 minutes left. I can look it up while you guys are talking.
Thanks, Dorian. There's a lot of wonderful conferences, and this is a COVID year, and there's so many things going remote, virtual, but things are still happening. Conferences are still happening. They're just, people are getting creative, and people are still riding, just in more safe, socially distant ways, but reconnecting on Zoom and through other online webinar platforms to be able to share these stories and ideas. So thanks so much for bringing up these different conferences, Michelle and Dorian.
Oh, Natalie, I forgot about the Winter Cycling Congress, which is where Natalie and I met in Winnipeg, in 2014. So
2014, yeah.
So I'll plug that one in too.
Okay, and the Winter Cycling Congress is an annual conference, international, where folks come together to promote riding in the snow and continue to ride when it's cold, and having fun doing so. It's a wonderful conference, so this will be cool to hear. And it's also, Michelle and I were both on a recent webinar that was called Snowfall, that was a warm up to the WCC 2021. And it was really cool to hear how, from an international perspective during a COVID year, how communities are doing biking. And some places are experiencing this in a different way than in the United States or places around Minnesota here. And so it's been, it was cool to hear those different perspectives and how people are working through that. So if you'd like a bit of an international perspective on how to keep biking and walking during this time, they will have some wonderful things to share. So great plug for that. So we are at time. It's 12:30. Thanks everyone for joining this webinar. This webinar was recorded today and will be on replay and on YouTube. So feel free to tune in to our channel, BikeMN, on YouTube, and listen to this and other replays of webinars we've held this year. So feel free to join us again in December, and we'll wrap up the year with one more speaker panel for 2020. So thanks. Have a wonderful day, everyone.